going. More praise.
All right, we'll get started here. So we'll get into our map just to um, start out here in Jerusalem. This is a really probably one of my favorite days because one of the
Hey,
things
Scott,
we
before you get too far
go
into it,
ahead.
I've got a meeting, a Zoom meeting that starts at noon. So I
Okay.
probably will be out a little before then.
All right, sounds good.
Good.
But one of my favorite things of this day is we basically retrace the final day of the life of Jesus. We'll add a few other things in there just because they're on the way. But it's really kind of a unique day because we follow the Garden of Gethsemane, the trials, and then of course the burial and resurrection. So it's really a neat day to be able to do that there in Jerusalem. So that's the plan. Again, this is the area of Jerusalem. Here is the Temple Mount. We're staying here very close to that in the Austrian Hospice is where we stay at. And we start the day going out to the Mount of Olives. So we'll basically come through here. We'll go down the Kidron Valley, and then we'll head up to the Mount of Olives, which is to the east of Jerusalem. Now, we probably will stop there one of the days, several days before to get a view, but this will be kind of the process we'll take that day. Again, this is a picture of the old Jerusalem here, or what it would have looked like in the times of Jesus. And so we'll be staying somewhere right around this region here. And so we'll come out this direction towards the Mount of Olives. When we get there, a few things. This is a vision basically from the wall of Jerusalem of the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is kind of, they call it, it has like a little indent here as well as an indent here. There's like three mountains: Mount Scopus, the Mount of Olives, Mount of there's another one you can't see on here, Mount of Offense. But anyways, originally we'll probably drive to this area sometime and view Jerusalem from that. But on this day, we're going to go down through the Kidron Valley, and then we're going to walk up this area. It's kind of a steeper walk, but we're going to go to a place called Dominus Flevit. The reason it's called that, basically, it's a picture. It's like a church, but the real neat thing is you get a vision of Jerusalem, and it's to be commemorating when Jesus came over the hill. And even we talked about last week how he mourned for Jerusalem. And the fact is, knowing that Jerusalem was one day going to be destroyed, that Jerusalem was rejecting Jesus, and this would be kind of the view. Now, the best picture I have from this region is an older picture, Jen and I here, when we were much younger, looking over the area of Jerusalem. But from this region, it kind of commemorates the idea of Jesus mourning over the city. And we'll talk about this because he knows the destruction, but he also knows the rejection he's going to face. As he would be heading down this hill, he would come over from Bethany to the Mount of Olives. And this is a real unique understanding to be able to take here at this time. So basically, the Mount of Olives is right here. Bethany would be back here, Bethany and Bethpage in this area. So he'd come up the mount, go down, and in this area right here is where Dominus Flevit is, and looking over here where Jesus would have mourned over Jerusalem. And we'll read those scriptures while we're there. And just the understanding of what was going to happen. Now, this is interesting to note. This may or may not have been there, but I think it's really unique that many people think that there was actually some type of bridge over the Kidron Valley, so they didn't have to go all the way down into the steep valley and back up, but there would have been a walkway to Jerusalem. Now, I've seen several images with this and without it. There's no really remnants of it, so it's not clear what it was, but from the Mount of Olives down to the Temple Mount. From there, we'll also see the Eastern Gate. We talked about this a little bit last week. Of course, this would have been the gate from the time of Suleiman the Magnificent. but the original gate, they believe, is underneath this, and it's sealed up. Even there's a bunch of graves in front of this because the Muslims believe that, well, the Messiah won't be able to walk on graves because it would make him impure, and so they put a bunch of graves right in front of here to try to dispel any of the rumors we have about the future times with the Eastern Gate, and we'll be mentioning some of that while we're there and looking at that. But that's this is a close-up of it. We'll see it from a distance when we're here on the mountain. We'll go from Dominus Flevit and we'll walk down here to this area here, the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, there's a few places that claim that they were the actual place where the garden was. It's hard to know exactly where Jesus would have been. Somewhere here on the Mount of Olives, Jesus would have been. They have a church, the Church of All Nations, that's built there. In the garden, it's really kind of unique because you'll see these trees here, several of these olive trees. Some people say they could date back to the time of Jesus, but most likely they're about 1,000 years old, these trees here. But just to get an image or picture of the area where Jesus would have been. One of the claims there in this spot right here in this corner that will take time to see is where there was there at one time was a olive press. And the idea of Jesus suffering in the garden, the olive garden, the pictures, the word picture is the pressure and the press that was placed on him, the agony that he was experiencing in the garden. And these are remnants of an olive press where it will kind of drain down the hill here. It's hard to make out in this picture, but we'll get to see it while we're there. And so we'll take opportunity to visit there in the Garden of Gethsemane. From there, we're going to follow the footsteps, thinking how Jesus was arrested, would have been taken through the Kidron Valley. So here's the Mount of Olives where we would have been, and the church right here of the All Nations. And then we'll go through the Kidron Valley. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the last days of Jesus, but we'll be going through the valley. So I wanted to point out a few things. We'll pass out some of these tombs, or past some of the tombs, and understanding that people were not allowed to be buried inside the city and outside the city. And this whole hill is basically a thousands of years old graveyard. You'll pass some tombs. Many of these date past the time of Jesus. We'll see what's called the Pillar of Absalom. Most people believe this wasn't actually the one was built for Absalom. If you remember that it talks about how Absalom's there's a Pillar of Absalom there in the valley of the Kidron Valley. It talks about that in the Old Testament. So this is called the Pillar of Absalom, but most likely it's not the one that dates back to the time of Absalom. And we'll talk about that when we go through there and the story of Absalom a little bit and be reminded of that, the pillar that was set up to remember his basically rebellion and his demise. We'll pass as well as some of these tombs. Probably not go, you can kind of go in them and look in them, and we may do that depending on time's sake and where things are at. But it is kind of neat because you can have the opportunity to kind of see where the types of burials they did. Sometimes these are blocked off. Sometimes they are open. There's gates that open and close. So it's hard to say if we'll be able to be allowed in those. But we'll take a walk from here, which would be the Mount of Olives. We go through the Kidron Valley, and then we're going to go up the modern road, but a similar road where Jesus would have walked to go to the house of Pilate. Not Pilate, I'm sorry, the house of Caiaphas. And here in the house of Caiaphas, what we're going to do is there's a church that's built on top of it. And this is the Church of St. Peter, and reminding us how Peter would have denied the Lord through this time, and we'll have opportunity to walk through this church. Many people think there's some debate whether this was actually the house of Caiaphas or not, but we're going to go see it and talk through it and see a few things. This is not the best graphic in the world, but gives a picture how this would have been built on a hill, courtyard, and down underneath we're going to have an opportunity to go down, and some things we're going to see is like this hole, which would have been used at one time for a well, but these are also used for when we think of the idea of a prisoner would be let down in a hole. We think of Jeremiah, how he was held down in basically a pit while Jerusalem was being destroyed. This gives a visual of the kind of idea of where he would have been here, where he would have been held. Underneath the house here, there would have been steps that go down into basically, some people say it was a mikvah, others say it would have been a place where possibly Jesus would have been kept. One of the unique things we're going to see is if you look right along here of the wall, it would have been places for people's arms to be hung up as they were prisoners, to be chained to the wall. And many people think this is where actually Jesus would have been held while he was waiting for the assembly to come together to put him on trial. So we'll be talking about this and the trial of Jesus as we walk through, and reminded of very similar. If this wasn't the place, we don't know 100%. If it wasn't the place, we'll get a similar idea of where they would have held prisoners, what they would have done with them, what Jesus would have gone through during his last days here at the house of Pilate. Outside the house of Pilate, we'll also get to walk up these stairs. We don't get to walk up them anymore. They have them blocked off. But we get to see the stairs. And most likely, if this was the house of Pilate, which many people believe it was, these are stairs that Jesus would have walked up to get to the house of Pilate, or basically been taken by the soldiers to, not the Pilate, I'm sorry, to Caiaphas. Caiaphas's house, not at Pilate's place.
I thought, I blinked and I missed the whole thing.
Nope, we're still at Caiaphas.
Okay.
So to Caiaphas's house, and we'll get to see these stairs. It was neat. They used to be able to walk up them, but because of wearing down and wanting to restore them, they blocked them off. So we will go ahead and we'll walk. We will see the stairs, and we'll just recount the final days. We'll take a lot of time reading through the Gospels, just recounting these things and the events and these places where they took place. And so after that, we're going to take a little bit of a detour, or in order of the last steps of Jesus, just because of where it's at. But we're going to go to a place called the Upper Room. And it basically looks like this today. Of course, this isn't the actual upper room of Jesus. This is just to be kind of a place to remind ourselves of what Jesus would have gone through. So basically, just to give you a general picture here, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. The old city of Jerusalem is in this region right here, the current old city. We would have gone from the Mount of Olives to the Kidron Valley, and then we come up here to this area where the church would have been. Then we're going to come across to this part right here that's in part of Jerusalem, now Old City Jerusalem. And right up here is where people say that's where the upper room could have been. Just to give you a visual here, we will be traveling then. This is where they believe the house of Caiaphas would have been, somewhere here in this region. And then the upper room would have also been somewhere here in this area of the city. And so we're going to visit it. Again, this is not authentic, but it is a second floor room. Just gives us an idea or a thought, and we'll take time to think about that, the day of Pentecost, how the disciples met afterwards, and just to give the visual of that. Underneath in the same region is also what they call the Tomb of David. We'll just make a quick stop there. This is not the authentic Tomb of David, but we are going to stop there, and it just to see some of the Jewish practices where they choose to worship here. For a while, they weren't able to go to the temple, or Temple Mount, so they established this instead of the Wailing Wall when they were prohibited. For a while, they established this as a place to come and worship, and they still do. I won't say worship, but what happens is many of the Jews will read scripture, and they'll be quoting their scripture and studying and going through the rituals that they do. They pray there as well, yes. So then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to head to the Zion Gate. The unique thing about this gate is you look at it, it's just riddled with bullet holes. And this was during the 67 war. So from 48 to 67, the Jews were not able to be in Jerusalem. When they first became a nation, there was a battle right away, and the Jordanians came through and they claimed some of the territory. Jews claimed several of the territory of the Israelites. And then finally in 67, there was a war, and the Jews were able to get inside of Jerusalem and reclaim some of Jerusalem, even at the point last week where we said that they reclaimed the Temple Mount, though they gave the Temple Mount back to the Arab nations. But it's just interesting because it's a reminder of the history, and so that will be the Zion Gate we'll have to see there. And it's just interesting because of all the bullet holes and the wars that took place even just back in 67. And what we're going to do from there is we're going to take opportunity then from the Zion Gate is we're going to walk on top of the city walls. This is really cool because you're able to walk back. Again, these walls were built in the 1500s by Suleiman the Magnificent. And we're going to get to walk on these walls from the Zion Gate all the way until, let me give you more of an image. Basically, I can't do this image actually, that doesn't do it. Let's go back over here. So we're going to get on the Zion Gate right here, and then we're going to walk all along the city walls up to this area of the Tower of David. So we'll get a view of some of the city, and it's really kind of a neat thing to see that they give you opportunity to walk on the walls. We're going to come up here to what's called the Tower of David. Tower of David has really nothing to do with David himself, because when David was alive, this is the city of David. There was nothing up here in this area, but they've named it the Tower of David. Where it was is right here. It's real significant where Herod's fortress was built. And also we see the very interesting thing is this is where the Praetorium would have been. So I believe, now some people think Jesus would have been taken from this region here where Caiaphas' house was over the fortress of Antonia to stand judgment before Pilate. My reasoning is this. It's in the middle of the night. Pilate has a choice of staying in this fortress made for soldiers, or is he going to sleep in a plush palace while he's there? And my thinking is, why would he be at this fortress instead of his palace that he would be at, the governor's palace that's in Jerusalem? Very important to note that many of the governors would not stay in Jerusalem all the time. They would only come to Jerusalem during times of feasts and festivals to make sure that peace and calm would happen. Most of the time was spent in Caesarea Maritime, which we would have seen or be at the first day while we're there, because they didn't really like the whole Jewish culture. They wanted the Roman city because there were Roman governors. And this is where Pilate most likely would have stayed. This is probably where Jesus was beaten, put on trial here in the Praetorium. There are still steps outside the old city wall that we'll get an opportunity to see a little bit. This is kind of a recreation of what Herod's palace, where Pilate would have been. It was a very large structure. So if we go back to our map, we see how much of the city this would have taken up. It's quite a portion of the city this would have been. So this is a recreation, and most likely somewhere in here is where Jesus would have been put on trial. We will have the opportunity to go down, hopefully if it's open. They're doing excavations on it, so it changes. We go down here in what's called the Kishla, which was a Jewish prison, actually, up until the recent years, even in the I can't remember the recent years, but they've excavated down underneath here and found down several layers that go down to even beyond where where Pilate's or Herod's palace would have been, where Pilate stayed. So it could have been somewhere around this region where Jesus was put on trial before Pilate. Again, we don't know the exact spot, and sometimes it's hard to make things out, but we'll have opportunity, hopefully, to go in this building if it's open. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And so we'll recount the trial. We'll read through some of that in that area, in that spot where Jesus would have stood before Pilate and finally been condemned to death and sent to his death on the cross. We're also going to take time while we're here, though we're retracing the steps of Jesus, since we're here. This is the Tower of David Museum. And in these little doors in many areas around, again, this has been built up over the different years. Most of this dates back to the 1500s, but it was built on previous things, fortresses that were built. Even part of the fortress still stands of this area right here where it says the Tower of Faisal, this area. Few little things stand from the time back in Herod would have originally built a fortress here. Remnants of it, much of it has been rebuilt. But this is a great museum to understand Jewish history, the history of Jerusalem. They have a lot of interactive displays with videos. It's just a really unique thing that we'll go through kind of at our own pace. This is, again, where headphones are helpful, because if not, you have to hold one of these things up to your ears. But if you have a headphone, then you're able to hear a lot of these things. And just, they're really kind of neat rooms to give a deeper understanding of Jerusalem, of the history of it, the Jewish culture today. And so we'll spend a couple hours here at this museum. From there, what we're going to do is we are going to head to the Dome of the Rock. Not Dome of the Rock, sorry. Wrong name. We're going to head to what many people think are Golgotha, but it is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is a vision of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's very kind of simple. These are the doors you go into. And I'll explain this so you understand. We are going to this traditional spot, which for me as a believer in Jesus Christ who wants something authentic, I come into this place and I don't really care for it, but it does give some good visuals of where we're at. Why I don't care for it? Because much of it has been, I would call, religionized, and it almost creates this eerie feeling to me when I go in there. But just to give you an understanding, when we first walk in, we're going to see this slab. This slab here is where many say, now this dates back to the time of Helena. If you remember, we talked about this. We'll talk about Helena several times, the mother of Constantine. She was sent back to Jerusalem Israel to find all the holy sacred spots. And this area is where she believes, through talking to people, that this is where Jesus was actually crucified, the stone he would have been laid on to be prepared for burial. And there is a lot of legitimacy to this could be the spot. One of the things we're going to see as we look on our map is right here is where that would have been in this region, the tomb, Golgotha. It would have been outside the city walls. Remember, this city wall was built after the death of Jesus, so it would have been outside the gate. We know that he was taken outside the city. There would have been a main gate where people would have come in this region here, so many people would have come through this area. So there is some very strong evidence that this might actually be the legit spot where Jesus had died. But we don't know that, and when we go in there, we'll see the slab. What you'll see is a lot of people kind of bowing down and kissing it. I'm not a fan of that, because people are worshiping, it seems, the spot rather than the risen Savior. But each person has a different religion or focus. This is actually operated. This whole region is operated by 4 different groups of Christian religion: the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox. There's a few others. I can't remember what they are. They kind of share responsibility, and even this whole church building itself, it's divided in kind of 4, where each group is responsible and they have to make a decision. And a lot of times they don't agree. These 4 Christian religions don't agree on decisions about this area. So it's a very interesting process. We're also going to see on the bottom floor, this is the area where they believe that the cross would have been, and there's like a crack in the stone for the idea of when he died, that the earthquake and the ground broke apart. Above that, we'll go up some stairs, and this is the spot where they believe the cross of Jesus would have been. Here's the rock that they have. Again, this is why I don't like it, is you just have all these ornaments, these statues, what I feel to me to be kind of like an idol worship that they have there, people bowing down, and you'll have an opportunity just to see it for a minute, and they keep people moving. From there, we're going to go downstairs to a spot. This is where Helena was supposed to have found the cross. Kind of, here's the story, is when Helena was trying to decide if this was the spot, they found some crosses buried underneath. And there's a couple different stories. Somebody was miraculously healed. Somebody was brought back to life. There's a few different stories that have come down or passed down tradition that she found. And that's how she knew that that was actually the cross of Jesus that had been discarded here in this area right next to the tomb. It's going to be hard to see because you think, well, it would have been a cave or, it doesn't make sense when you're in there, but this graphic kind of helps out a little bit. This is where they say the cross would have been. And then this is where they say the tomb would have been. And originally this would have been in rock. So these things here are all rock. It's all been dug out. So everything basically is dug out, and this is one full open space, a lot of open space building, or a church has been built on top of it because they removed all the rock, the cave that would have surrounded where Jesus would have been. Now what's left is this. So they say this originally would have been not the cave, but the tomb that would have been dug out of the rock. And again, they've excavated all the rock around it. So you'll have if the line's not long, we'll see. Sometimes the line's very long. Most likely there won't be long lines if we're actually able to get there because of there won't be a lot of tourism going on. But if we get to go in there, basically you see this area right here. They say this is where the body of Jesus would have been laid. Again, we don't know the accuracy of this. I don't really like this place just because it's been taken over by all these religions, and you have all these symbolisms and things that to me detours from the real meaning of it. But it's good to see while you're there. I think it's important. A lot of groups will skip it, but I think it's kind of interesting at least to see, to understand. And that's where they think it would have been. Now from there, we're going to go to another place that I really enjoy, and I wish that I could believe it was the actual place, because it just gives you so much of a better feeling. When you're in that Church of the Holy Sepulchre, to me, it's almost like a oppressive feeling. But we're going to go then from here, we're going to go out the Damascus gate, the gate we had come in before, which would have been this region, to an area right around here that is called, it was originally called Gordon's Calvary, but it's called the Garden Tomb. The reason this was originally thought that this could be the place is this is a very old picture, but if you look at this right here, many people believe this looked like a skull. You see the two eyes, kind of the nose, the mouth, and believe that Jesus could have been crucified either right here or on top of here. Now, it won't look like this today. There's actually a big bus parking lot right down here. And this over here is where the Garden Tomb was. But this is back from the Damascus Gate, the picture taken from the Damascus Gate, the place of the skull. So many people think this could have been Calvary, Golgotha. And then from there, what was found is there's a garden just over in this region, and we'll get to walk through it. It's a beautiful spot, very calm, quiet, serene spot that we'll get to remember the death and resurrection of Jesus. In there, they have this image to show how there was a cistern, which means there was a garden there to be able to help provide. We know that Joseph's tomb, it described how there was a garden there. And so this would have been used to water the garden. This is kind of the image of what it's like today. Again, it's a very quiet, bright, vibrant spot compared to the Holy Sepulchre, which is all dark and dim and depressing, I think, where this is more what the Christian faith is about, is life and the joy that we have in Christ. we'll have an opportunity to walk into this. Most likely, again, this was not the tomb of Jesus, but it will help us to have an understanding of what the tomb of Jesus would have been similar to. You'll get to walk in there and just to kind of see, where the bodies would have been laid. And it's much more of a joyous experience. We'll take time there to really reflect and think about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And again, it just gives such a different perspective, this area. So we'll take some time there. Possibly we'll join a group for having communion there. It's hard to say if there's other groups there. A lot of times a large group, you can arrange to have communion stuff all set up for you. And it's hard to say though this, what will be going on at this time. But that is the plan if everything's open. There is, if we're able to make it there and things are open, it all depends how many people left. Like this is run by foreigners. So if foreigners left, then this is going to be closed down. And if they're not back, then this place might not even be open or the limited hours. So it may change based on what's going on. But that's the plan. And so for the day, basically, we start out here. We go up to the Mount of Olives, down through the Kidron Valley. We come over to the house of Caiaphas. Then we go and we follow Pilate and the trial of Pilate. Then we go to the place of Golgotha, the death, burial, and resurrection, and spend the day focusing on the victory we have through Jesus Christ and retrace his final footprints. So that's what we're going to see that day. Quite a bit of walking up and down hills, but we'll do it at a moderate pace to be able to take time in to also reflect and to think about these things and just get an understanding of what Jesus would have walked through in those final days, or where he would have been in and around Jerusalem. So that will be probably it for that day. And it will take us basically from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Then after dinner, again, it will be an optional tour. We'll do something in Jerusalem that night. For those who want to keep going, for those who just want to rest, that'll be fine as well. So that will be basically our day. Any questions that you may have?
I don't have any questions about the day. Have you in your own mind kind of set, like, if things are still iffy by this date, we've got to cancel, or how are you thinking currently on that?
Should also check on how much stuff is going to be open.
Right, but all the if everything's done, it will all be open except for some of the private things. In my mind, it's going to be a lot of it up to those participants who want to come. I'm willing up to 2 weeks before
That's kind of what I was thinking
to
too.
be able to say, and if 2 weeks before, if it looks like nothing there, just for everybody else's plans, to say, hey, we'll look at other options, postpone, move it around. That's what I'm thinking, is up to 2 weeks before, because again, this is different than a physical war where there's actual battle going on inside there, because once if there's a truce made and all of a sudden missiles stop going, because that's really the danger, is just the idea of Iran sending in missiles. That's the whole danger of that. Once, and hopefully there will be enough done that something will be made, and so that's kind of my date, is I would think 2 weeks before. For those, if you're not comfortable at any time, not only you guys, but whoever else is, the others that are watching this, fully welcome to cancel if you're not comfortable. To me, I'm completely comfortable, because it's not like you have invading forces that are coming in. You just have, once those missiles stop, it's really, everything's back to normal. And it doesn't take long because they are used to this in Israel, in a sense. Things really operate even as normal. Like today, during the days, the government right now does have restrictions on groups, but a lot of it, they simply operate as normal, and just when their sirens go off, they go to the bomb shelter, and then they come back out and resume their days. So it's not like everything stops or is on hold there, because their activity often goes on just like normal. So the only things that would be hindered are when we go to places that are run by outside organizations, like the Garden Tomb, because those people would have left. Many of them probably would have left, so that might not be open. A few of the other places might not be open that rely on foreigners to run rather than locals to run.
The only other thing I thought, and I don't know if this would be an occurrence, but if they close the airport. And of course, we wouldn't know that until even closer than 2 weeks probably.
Well, and the airports are really, and the more thing that even close the airports is the flights, that flights that go in. And that's going to be,
that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, if the flights that go in are closed, obviously, we're not going to be able to do it. And we won't know that until if they haven't come to some type of peace agreement by then we won't go, because then there's always still that option of the things closing. But if they've come to some type of agreement, normally once they do that, then everything is calmed down for quite some time, especially this, because it's been a bigger thing. And from what I read, it sounds like, with President Trump, he wants to make sure that this isn't a common, regular occurrence, that he wants to take care of it now. So I think once things are taken care of, if that's done in time, then we don't have to worry about that, and things will be continually open. So the only reason they'll close the airport is if they know there's going to be or they suspect incoming missiles will come in. And so a lot of everything bases on if there's going to be some type of treaty or peace agreement reached. Any other questions? Yes.
I think that's very unlikely. I don't think.
And it could, and I do probably agree with you. I want to hold on to hope that
Sure.
that it could be
to throw in the towel before we have to.
Right. So I want to hold on hope, but I do, in the reading of things I've seen, I do, because again, and I understand they don't want to have to do this again in a year. They want to finish it now since they've started. So I do see that, and perhaps it'll finish sooner than later, and that's our hope, but it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm not a good person to sign up for trips. Because
0 for 2, Joel.
it seems like somehow I draw chaos.
Yeah, I think that's just the way things go. So we'll have opportunity. We'll just see what the Lord does, and we still have 5 weeks of that. So there's still
I mean, we're 8 days into this.
So there's still a positive chance. It's hard to say what comes out of Iran too, because they say a lot of things that aren't true. And they try to do threats and all this, and all of a sudden they did this last time, and all of a sudden they just turned around and then wanted to, they say no peace, and all of a sudden they'll turn around and say we'll make an agreement, and same thing, it's so hard to say. So hopefully.
Well, and like you were saying, and when Fred has communicated with his person there in Tel Aviv, it's like you said, it's kind of business as usual, sadly, for the people of that area. But at the same time, like in New York City, they have these violent in the street things going on. And that's not what's going on there.
Right.
It's like you said, it's the missiles, they're set up for that. They have the protection for that. Is there zero danger? I don't think there'll ever be zero danger. But yeah. So, and our dog sitter lives across the street. So it's not like we have to give that person a lot of notice if we're going to do it or not.
Right. So, all right. Well, we'll see what happens. And then I think we're finished then. You have a great day.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Is there a reason you sent the PDF for day 9? Is it different than what's in the book?
No, I just like to break them down. They're slightly different. Jen had proofread some things and changed a couple things.
Okay.
but I just keep sending the PDFs in case for some it
I've
might
never noticed the PDF
Oh,
until
okay.
today.
it might be easier just to go some day by day rather than look at the book, but
Yeah.
it's pretty much
Okay.
identical to what's in the book. It's just
Okay.
broken down by day.
It's
All
just
right.
better
All right.
format.
Thanks
and
for all
it
your
looks
work on
prettier.
this.
All
Yeah,
right.
Thanks a bunch.
We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.